Green. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Green Zone podcast for episode 4 here on our YouTube channel. Happy to be back with you. Cameron Green with you here. I'm your host of this Green Zone podcast here in the College of St. Scholastica's media studio that we gladly use. What we're going to be looking at today, I got to talk about the new UNLV quarterback situation and how that might shake up college athletics. How we're going to see if that, as I'm going to put it, it's a new beast in college football. It's a new thing we have to deal with, new thing we have to look at. And it's going to shape up a lot of things. And then we're going to look into our NFL picks this week, kind of a shorter episode. Our week 3 outlook. Got some storylines we're going to talk about here, maybe some Andy Dalton stuff, Carolina Panthers, but we will lead into our picks for week 4 like we do every single week on this podcast. And yeah, that'll be today's episode. Kind of a bit of a shorter one, but it's what's on the agenda today. I want to start in college athletics. I don't think I've ever started an episode like this before. Um, it's beginning with our story in Las Vegas, the city of aces, the city of gambling, everything, like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Reportedly, what does not stay in Vegas is your quarterback. Matthew Sulka is leaving UNLV. And I'm going to be honest, I've not watched a lot of UNLV football this year. I haven't really been following UNLV football this year, but they are 3-0. I know that much. Um, I know they're ranked inside the top 25. Now, when you lose your quarterback, I think a lot of people are a little bit confused to what extent that this was going to be. Um, what made zero sense was leaving a team that's undefeated unless for mysterious reasons. It's super mysterious until it comes out that NIL money that was promised is no longer being granted or being, everyone's not being adequately paid as what they agreed to. And that's the thing with NIL is that everything is verbal. It's all a verbal agreement. This is all a handshake deal. No one knows. There's no contracts in NIL, so no one really knows how much money you are or aren't making. And I think that's, what is the downfall with NIL money is you don't really know how much someone is making or how much someone's not making. It's all estimates. You can look up right now. If I looked up right now what Shador Sanders makes NIL wise, they're like, all right, it's $5 million, but that's your estimation. Like that's not what it is. Like you don't know what it is. You know that someone is signed to Nike or to Gatorade or to, something like that. You don't know the extent of that contract. And that's the problem with college athletics right now. This is what the problem is with NIL money dealing with players. And this is maybe the first time a player saying, like, I'm out. Like, that's it. Like, you don't pay for the goods. You don't pay for my services. I'm out of here. Like, I don't care. And I kind of understand the kid because, how many times are kids or college quarterbacks coming out of UNLV? Very rarely are, college quarterbacks being produced, brought out, coming out of a D1 program that's not historically good football school, but it's produced some football players. But, you know, it gets around circulation that money's not being floated around with some of these programs, with like Adrian Wojnarowski now going to St. Bonaventure to be a GM. How far are we removed from contracts being into play um, at college programs? Or how long are we away from really it being um, kind of like the old rules once again, like the transfer window? I know they say it's open year to year, but some of these schools got to be protected too. I know you want to say you got to protect the athletes. It's always been about the athletes now for the last 3 years, whatever, since the NIL has been introduced and upheld by the Supreme Court, and that's basically where it's been. But these schools right now are kind of now finding themselves at the bottom of the pile. They're the now what they used to be the big fish in the koi pond, eating everybody up and getting everything, and no one else gets a piece. They now are at the mercy of the athletes. And I understand where athletes come from. They want to have some saying about what happens to their name, image, and likeness. I understand that. But why don't they get a big piece of the cut? The the piece of the big puzzle instead of them floating around and then we're gonna take, handshake deals from boosters, from coaches that no one knows about. No one knows really what the right method is to go about it. And then you look at it too. Who's to say that this $100,000, whatever it was the offer is, that was not, maybe it was 50,000. And Sluga says we're 3-0. Today's price is not tomorrow, is not today's price, or yesterday's price is not today's price. It's not gonna be tomorrow's price. I don't know. Is it very much kind of like coming up here in NIL money that schools are gonna be more protected if they almost have a payroll than they do with deals? Or are schools gonna be required to have a GM that pays them like an NBA team, an NFL team? Because if I'm a UNLV fan, I'm pissed. You're 3-0. UNLV, you don't have a ton of success or historical success around your football program. The time's now. And your quarterback says, I'm out. Like, I don't really know what you do um, if you're UNLV, but like in the grand scheme, the bigger picture of things, I think this is like a new beast in college athletics. It's like Frankenstein. You've given Frankenstein enough power to come alive, and now you don't know what to do about it. You've given these athletes way too much power. Now, if you want to take some of that back, you're infringing on their rights as athletes that was granted to them. You know what I mean? Like it's an awkward in between where some schools can't sit there and say, I want to, I want to sit there and I want to play these amount of games and I want to get paid this amount of money. And if you don't like that, then I'm gonna go take myself to somewhere else. And what sucks in the whole scheme of the college athletics now is these smaller schools that build up programs are basically extinct because you are essentially a farm system for other schools. If I'm a quarterback right now and I'm playing at UMass or Boston College, you're playing this year with Bill O'Brien, and now Boston College is having a good deal of success. And I'm a quarterback and I'm playing well. And all of a sudden I get a call, I get a knock on my door, I get a letter, and it's Ryan Day at Ohio State. And the money that they have is significantly more than they had at Boston College. The playing time might be significantly different, might be more, might be less. The atmosphere is totally different. But what are you going to do if you're that kid? There's no guarantee you're making it to the NFL. So if your kid can lock in 125,000 versus making 60,000 at Boston College, yeah, you're going to grab that money. You're going to get that while you can. And while you can, you need to do that. I understand, like, guys, and if I was an athlete, I'm in that same boat. If someone's offering me double for what I'm getting at one school, with no penalty in the transfer fee in the transfer window, why not? I mean, like, I feel like I understand these athletes to a certain degree of I would be absolutely in the same boat. You got to get yours. There's no guarantee in college football. There's no guarantee in pro football. The money's a little different, but there's no guarantee anywhere. And you have to be able to cash in what you can get. And this starts with football. I don't know where this is going to translate to. You're going to get basketball recruits being like, "Hey, where's my money? Where's my cut? Where is it? Like, where is it going to be? Where are we going to sit here in a couple months when college basketball kicks off?" And you would see a similar situation in that sense, or baseball, or I mean, anything that you really had to do. Like, this is, I think, the beast in college athletics that you cannot put down now. It's a new can of worms being open here. So we'll see what happens, for UNLV, for Matt Sluka. I'm sure he'll go to a fine program once he's done for this year. He's redshirting this year. He's got one more year to make it big. Give it one more year to take that big shot. Um, I feel for a kid in that situation. Like I say, I would do the same thing if I was him. But it shows what's wrong with the system. The system needs to be fixed somehow. The system has no control. Schools have no control, no saying over how the system works. The NCAA is basically this leash is probably longer than a football field, if you want to say it, put in that text, but there is no leash. Doesn't exist. We'll see what happens here at the NCAA, but I think it could be something a scenario like this could absolutely um, shape what goes on in college athletics, what goes on um, going forward for this future of college sports. I want to turn for a little bit and take a little look at our picks, some of our week 3 outlook that we have on the agenda for today. Last week did okay, in my spread picks. Um, Looking at some of the ones I got wrong, though, I couldn't believe Houston looked as bad as they did against Minnesota. I don't know how to feel. Is Minnesota that good or is Houston that poor? Um, that one I'm really not sure of. The Giants coming off with a surprise win in Cleveland. Cleveland's looking so bad right now. I feel for that fan base, and you're paying a quarterback that much money, you expect to get something else out of it, and they're just not right now, and that's the grand truth of it all. And Tampa Bay looking as weak as they did against Denver. Bo Nix looking like the future quarterback of the Denver Broncos that Sean Payton wants. Um, and the Carolina Panthers. You know what? I feel for Bryce Young. I do. They want to talk about how it's a confidence thing. There's probably nothing that shakes your confidence more than watching someone else take the team that many were saying is going to win 2 games. If you're the quarterback there, take this team and essentially dismantle another team. Doesn't matter how bad or good or bad the team is, but another pro football team. The Raiders are a franchise. They were had high hopes for this year at some, whatever those high hopes were. But man, I don't really know like when does Bryce get his chance back? I don't really know. It doesn't really feel like anytime soon. Like you don't have anything to gain with Andy Dalton. So if you start losing games, you can just put the kid back in there in week 9 or week 10, whenever they feel he's ready. But you're really not going to gain a lot with Andy Dalton. But for Andy Dalton, this is going to be awesome for you. Especially this week, you're going to go play. You got 2 weeks back to back here against your old teams. Like we're going to see how that looks. Um, Especially now when like Cincinnati's got 0 wins right now. Dalton's got himself one of the undefeated quarterbacks here in the league. Um, and that's just something that for, Dalton, you gotta look at yourself, gotta look in the mirror and be like, hell yeah. Hell yeah, I'm back. I was never gone. Kind of like the Flacco of next year. It's like, is Dalton one of those guys, comeback player of the year? If Carolina wins like 8 or 9 games and Bryce doesn't see the field again this year, I mean, I could very well see Dalton being in that mix there, but you never know right now. We're going to translate over into our picks for this week. Of course, we're doing it on the spread on the ESPN picks. Again, pick them. You can play on ESPN. Looking at it, I think this Thursday night game is not as one I thought both teams would have the same record heading into. Whereas tonight's game is Cowboys and Giants. It's in New York. Dallas will come into that hostile environment at a 4.5 point favorite spread. Listen, I didn't think both these teams were going to be 1-2 at this point in the season. I thought Dallas was a much better team than that. I still think they are. The Giants playing a poor Browns team. I can see Dallas kind of running away with this one. I think they're going to take the 4.5 point spread. I'll also take them in this straight up. Dallas, I don't want to say they're in survival mode right now, but you can't afford to go 1-3 when you're going to pay Dak this much money. You're going to pay CeeDee Lamb this much money. You're going to have to pay Micah Parsons this much money. Um, it's going to get rough, when it comes to paying guys here in the future. But Dallas needs to get back on track, as they will tonight. I think they're going to go back to 2-2. They're going to beat the Giants by more than 4.5. Take them in this straight up and the spread. Looking at Sunday's first game on the agenda here is the New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are actually favored by 1.5 points. Um, they are the home team. Kirk Cousins has this team looking pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie, they look okay. Like they don't look, I wouldn't say fantastic, but they look all right. New Orleans though at 2-1. The offense looked pretty non-existent last week against Philly. Philly's got a decent defense. They have a good rush, decent corners. Secondary is pretty solid, but um, I am actually going to take the Saints in this one. I'm going to go on them one more time. I don't think the Saints are that good of a team. At least I didn't have them going into the year. But I think this Saints squad is good enough to beat the Falcons team, go to 3-1. I think New Orleans is for real this year. I think they have that mindset of anyone can win the NFC South right now. Carolina is 1-2 and one game out of first place. Like it's really that kind of year. Anyone can win the South. I think New Orleans is going to take this one. Going to be a close game, but they'll cover the 1.5 point spread. So I'll take them in the straight up, and I will take New Orleans in the spread to cover the 1.5 point underdog spread this week. Got another game on our hands today. It's Caleb Williams at home against the LA Rams. Now, the Bears are 2.5 point favorites, but most people are not picking them to win this game. You know, LA is basically surviving starting the year 0-3, as I thought they were going to do, taking on the 49ers. Kyron Williams with a great game. My thought process around this Rams team doesn't really change heading into this year, or this week, I should say. They're a real banged up squad. You have no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. I don't think Kyron Williams will run the same way he did against San Francisco and Chicago. Caleb has looked pretty subpar. He threw for a lot of yards last week, but it's also in garbage time and you're not playing the greatest team. Caleb needs a game. He needs a game to get the hype back and get the hype kind of off Jaden Daniels for the moment and the time being. And what better way to get back to 500 for this team than to do it at home against the Rams? Bears are 2.5 point favorites in the spread. I will take them in this one. Chicago will go back to 2-2. And again, that NFC North, it's a close division right now. Minnesota with 3-0 in the front. I didn't think that was going to happen. If Chicago wants to stay in the mix, that's what's going to happen. They will do that this week here at home at Soldier Field. Now, the next game here is the border battle between the Vikings and the Packers, where the Packers are 2.5 point favorites. Both quarterbacks are hurting right now. They say Jordan Love has got a serious chance of playing this week. Darnold had the MRI last week, just a bone bruise, nothing significant in his knee. There's a part of me that wants to say Minnesota is going to fall back to earth and they're going to come back down and get off that 3-0 wagon. But there's a part of me that says this defense has made two of the best teams the last 2 weeks, two of the most talented teams look silly in Houston and San Francisco. And if Malik Willis is starting this week, I can't fully go into it saying Love's going to play, and I can't go into it saying Love's going to be 100% because he's just not going to be. Whereas I think the Vikings are 100% in a lot of areas. Maybe not Darnold, maybe not Jefferson, but Aaron Jones looking to have that kind of game. Jalen Nailor looked pretty well last week for Minnesota. You might have Jordan Addison back. Green Bay is 2.5 point favorites at home at Lambeau. I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna say the Vikings are gonna be 4-0. Folks, look at my first episode of here on season 2. I thought the Vikings were gonna go like 1-5, 1-6. I could have easily saw it, but that's the way the NFL works. I will eat my crow. The Vikings, I think, are for real. They're gonna be 4-0. They're gonna cover the 2.5 point spread. And that will be that game in Green Bay. It's gonna be a close one. I think it's gonna come down to maybe a Will Reichard field goal at the end of the game. But Minnesota gonna be 4-0 after this week, I'm predicting. Next game we got in our hands is the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to take on the Indianapolis Colts, where the Steelers are 1.5 point favorites. Again, another squad I did not think was gonna be 3-0. And you look at where Cincinnati is 0-3. It's a dangerous game to play if you're Cincinnati. Pittsburgh, I think, will win this one by 1.5 points. Russell Wilson still not playing. Looks like Justin Fields is going to be that dude. At what point does Pittsburgh shop Russell Wilson? I mean, I think it was a battle all along. I always thought Pittsburgh should have gone with Fields. Like, what upside do you get from Russ? I still think that Fields is the perfect guy for this team. He doesn't have to be a savior on offense because their defense is so damn good. I think they're also going to win this one by 1.5. They're going to make Anthony Richardson look silly. And I'm going to say Joe Flacco will make an appearance in this game. Whether Anthony Richardson is playing that poorly or he gets knocked out to an injury, Flacco is going to make an appearance in this game. That's my like hot take for the week. Pittsburgh's going to be 4-0 after this week. They'll win a game by 1.5 points over the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the next game we have in our hands is the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets. Jets at 6.5 point favorites. They covered that spread easily. The same spread last week against the Patriots. Now, I don't know how I feel. I took the Patriots last week to cover that spread. They obviously, of course, did not. But Denver looked pretty solid against uh against Tampa Bay. But I think I have a hard time expecting Denver to play this well again with the secondary led by Sauce Gardner. The Jets, I think, are hitting on all cylinders right now. They're going to continue that, I think. It's going to be a 6.5 point favorite for the Jets at home. I think it's going to happen. I think the Jets are just looking really solid right now. Rodgers, I mentioned he got to have a baller game last week. The dude looked pretty freaking good. Pretty freaking good. So I think the Jets are going to cover this 6.5 point spread. They're going to move to 3-1 in the division. And they're going to be competing with Buffalo this year, I think, for the division. I said Miami in my predictions, but that's not a healthy squad. It's kind of like I picked Green Bay to win the North. They're not healthy. That's what happens in the game of football. Jets win this one, I think, by at least 2 touchdowns, I want to say. Jets will beat the Broncos, take them in the spread and the straight up. Now, this is probably the trickiest game of the week, I think, in my book. The Eagles at 2-1, taking on the Buccaneers at 2-1. Tampa has looked subpar at home. They took care of Jaden Daniels in week 1, but Bo Nix looked pretty good week 3. Now, I don't know if they expected Nix to be a more pocket passing quarterback, and he was. He was making throws, but were they more suited for the mobile quarterback? That's where it's tough to me. Is Jalen Hurts really going to be that effective this week? Um, AJ Brown looking like he's not going to play. Devonta Smith is questionable. Dallas Goedert had a big game last week, but at the end of the day, Saquon Barkley is looking like the Saquon Barkley from like 2018. He's looking like he went into the portal, came out a brand new man. Um, I'm going to take the Eagles in this one. They have a 2.5 point spread. I could see them winning on a last game field goal. I think this is kind of a very, very good squad Philly has, but I think Baker's going to have a big game too. But it's just going to come up just short. I think Tampa's going to have a slow start out the gate. Philly will pounce on that. They're going to be 3-1 and still atop that NFC East. The division, them and Dallas, it's going to be between them two this year, I think. I'll take the Eagles in the straight up, and I'll take them up in the spread as well. Now, Cincinnati, they're 0-3. Carolina's 1-2. I mentioned last week that Cincinnati cannot afford to go to 0-3. And they're here. They're 0-3. Andy Dalton playing against his former team. He looked really good last week. So did Burrow. I think Jaden Daniels just looked that much better. I'm torn on this one, but I have to respect what Andy Dalton has done this last week. Cincinnati looks horrible. They don't look like a good football team defensively. I am going to take the Bengals in this straight up, but I am going to take the Panthers in the spread here. Bengals are 4.5 point spread favorites. I think Dalton's going to have another game that's going to be resembling what it was last week. Maybe not 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but a guy who's going to complete a good percentage of his passes, throw for over 200 yards, maybe get a couple touchdowns. I think it's going to happen this week. Carolina will go to 1-3. I think Cincinnati finally gets on the board. But I will take Carolina in the spread, but Cincinnati in the straight up. Next game we have here is the 0-3 Jags taking on the 2-1 Texans. I'm going to keep this one short. Jacksonville sucks right now. I mean, Trevor Lawrence isn't like incredible at all. He's completing 47% of his passes. They look lost. They don't look good. Houston, 6.5 point spread. They will clear that. Jacksonville's going to go 0-4. Doug Peterson. We're turning up the heat on the burner of his job. Something's gonna have to change in Jacksonville after this week. They're just too good of a squad to not be winning games. In a division that's not really anyone's, they have not recovered from last year even a little bit. Doug Peterson's job is going to be on the line here closely as we get close to week 4, 5, and 6. Jacksonville's going to be 0-4. Houston gets back on track to 3-1. The 305 game we have here is the Commanders and the Cardinals. Now, the Commanders looked really solid against Cincinnati. Cardinals are 1-2. Commanders are 2-1. This is one I can see going either way. I can see Jane Daniels kind of laying an egg and Kyler Murray having a big game, or I can kind of see Kyler Murray having an egg and Jane Daniels playing a good game. But my gut tells me it's going to be Washington. Now, Arizona is 3.5-point favorite this week at home, but I'm going to take Washington both ways. I'm going to take them in the straight up, and I'm going to take them in the spread. Washington to me is a better team than Arizona right now on a week-to-week basis, and we're going to look at that this week and see how that is. Jaden Hill's got another good game, I think. They'll be 3-1. This NFC East might be the best division in football. Next 305 game we have is the 49ers taking on the Patriots. Now, 9.5-point spread is a lot, especially for a squad that does not look that strong. Christian McCaffrey, we don't know. We don't know about him. We don't know about George Kittle. Deebo Samuel's probably not going to play. I don't think you can expect Jennings to have that same week he had last week against, um, you can't expect him to have another, what was fancy outing of like 46 points. You can't expect that. You need Brandon Ayuk to step up. Jordan Mason has done, I think, solid for what you've asked him to do. I'm going to take reluctantly the 49ers in both the spread and the straight up. Part of me just doesn't feel that confident at 9.5 points. It's a big spread for a team that's really banged up. But Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots didn't look that awesome last week. I will take the Niners reluctantly in a 9.5-point spread in both ones here, as the Niners look back to get the 500 play. Then we got here the Cleveland Browns and the Vegas Raiders. I think Vegas is in shambles. I think Cleveland's in shambles. But my gut tells me it's Cleveland. I've been taking them week in and week out, and I've been let down twice this year. Deshaun Watson has to play better. Or Jameis Winston will play this week. That could be my other hot take there. Jameis Winston might play this week at some point. Um, Vegas is just not where they want to be right now. I wonder if they're looking at Gardner Minshew and saying, Aiden O'Connell, get your clipboard ready. You might not be that much longer till you're in there. I'm going to take the Browns this week. They're going to get back to 500. Watson's going to have to play better. We'll see what Jerome Ford does in the backfield, Mari Cooper and the receiving core does. But I will take the Browns to cover the 1.5-point spread. Vegas is 1.5-point favorites. But I'm still nervous about this game. I think it could be just an absolute crapshoot between both squads. Looking here at our last 325 game, our Kansas City Chiefs taking on the LA Chargers. 7.5 points is a lot. It's a big spread, but I don't think Justin Herbert's there at all, 100%, even remotely. Whereas Kansas City, 3-0, I think for them, they're going to continue to be 4-0 for this week. I like them to have a really strong showing. I like them to have that kind of week. Kansas City will be 4-0. They're going to cover the 7.5-point spread, and the Chargers are going to fall back to 500 at 2-2. Now, the game I think that has the most implications this week is the Bills and Ravens. I think so. You got both squads here, both looking to get back on track. Buffalo at 3-0, Baltimore at 1-2. You got a couple of squads here, both trying to mix and match what they can and cannot do. But I think Buffalo right now is a better squad than Baltimore is. I also think that Buffalo right now just has a better understanding of who they are and where they are right now. Baltimore needs this game, I think, to hold on to what they're doing. But Buffalo right now is going to cover the 2.5-point spread. I'll take them straight up, and I'll take them in the spread as well. And then we got 2 Monday Night Football games this week. Both games I think are not the most awesome for them, both teams. Why? Tennessee Titans at a 0.5-point spread currently over Miami Dolphins. Miami's just not healthy. I mean, right now they're just not where they want to be. They're just not what they want to do. I think Tennessee actually finally gets on the board here. Gets to 1-3 possibly on the squad, but Miami goes down to 1-3. If you ask me, I think you might be flirting with a scenario that Russell Wilson might be on the trade block to go to Miami. If you're Mike McDaniel, you're trying to recover some of your losses there and think, why not? Then right now, Tennessee right now gets on the board. Will Levis gets himself a little bit of confidence back. But Miami right now at 1-3, you might be asking and calling Mike Tomlin to see what's going on. In the last Monday Night Football game we have of the week, the Seattle Seahawks at 4.5 point underdogs at Detroit. And this one I think Seattle is actually going to take. I say this, meaning because I think Seattle is at a spot in the season where they want to prove that they're better than they actually are. I think they want to show that the NFC West is actually a division that they think that they can handle, that they can take. Whereas Detroit, I think right now thinks they're probably better than they actually possibly might be. Seattle, I think right now a 3-0 squad that is solid. You got good receivers, a good running game, either with both Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker. I think if Kenneth Walker takes it easy and does not play again this week, then you have Zach Charbonnet once again to show them that this can be a solid Washington squad. You have a decent back or a secondary with Devin Witherspoon leading the charge there. Seattle, I would not sleep on Seattle this week. I think they're a team that at 4.5 points spread underdogs. Can very much see them playing a very close back and forth game with the Lions. Lions are going to fall back down to 2-2 as this NFC North race gets a little more interesting. I think it's going to be Vikings at 4-0, followed with the Bears, Packers, and Lions all at 2-2. So that's gonna be my picks for this week. I think you can lock them in as we're gonna head in here. I want to thank you all for listening to our fourth episode of the Green Zone podcast on our YouTube channel. Follow us also on our Twitter page at the Green Zone Pod. Season 2, episode 4. We peacing out here. Thank you for listening from Cameron Green, checking out here on the Green Zone Pod. Hey. Yeah. Dude, obviously, I've been going